Welcome everybody to more Drak and Shadow vlogs with your hosts, Shadow Blazer 3000.
And I'm Drak.
So today's vlog is The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, saturated with villains' pants.
Or he likes to call it Villain Fest 2014. And, well, frankly it kind of was.
Mm-hmm.
So, like always, as the deal always goes, spoiler alert, we go through the whole movies pretty beat by beat, so...
We like to dissect it.
If you're really anxious to see this and you don't want any spoilers, so turn off the video now, go see it at your local movie theater. If you don't...
It's okay, we'll wait.
If you really don't care about spoilers, then keep watching, see if you feel it's worth your while. Either way, let's go ahead, we'll get started, and we'll, of course, like always, we start with the plot summary.
No, it's okay, we'll wait.
No, we're not going to wait.
Okay.
We're not going to wait.
Alright, we're not Likara?
No.
Okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and go into the plot synopsis. The plot is very hard to figure out, or at least to put in kind of story elements. Like, I really just kind of want to break apart all the stories that are going on, because then at that point we can kind of better analyze it. So, obviously the story is following Peter Parker, yet again. He is Spider-Man. He's the disputed hero of New York, because you have... where the people of New York like him, the cops, and J. Jonah Jameson, who, strangely enough, never made a single... Yeah. The most we ever got was Microsoft Outlook from J. Jonah Jameson. That was it. From him, which is actually kind of silly, because I remember at one point there was a trailer or an image saying that there was a Daily Bugle Tumblr that was going to come out of this, and after talking to my friend Stephen Romney over Romney's reviews, that's nowhere. And I double checked. I couldn't see the Daily Bugle at Tumblr. Couldn't see it at all. So, yeah, so you have the debate whether or not, well, you're supposed to in these comics. They don't really debate it. Spider-Man is perceived as a good guy by most. Even the cops perceive him as a good guy. And a lot of that has to do with the first movie, given the fact that, I'm trying to remember in the first movie, he, saved the police chief before he died. And all that, so the cops have his respect. Or have respect for him. So that's one of the stories, obviously. Peter Parker is trying to be the everyday Spider-Man, and he's sucking at it because while you play the hero, the social life has to suffer. For example, he's late to his high school, I'm assuming it's his high school graduation. He's late to his graduation, he can't keep his love life in order. Wow, Spider-Man fans who saw that one coming, please stand on your head. It's typical Peter Parker. He can't keep everything else in his life going right, but he can keep Spider-Man. And on top of that, he has questions. Obviously, he has the same questions that he did from the first film. Who was his dad? Why did his dad leave him? And so we go a little bit further into that storyline, and where that goes. We also get a little bit of a prequel to it, just kind of giving us more as a viewer of who. I don't think they ever mentioned his mother's name. And
Mary. Her name was Mary.
Parker.
I heard it, yeah.
It was Richard and Mary Parker. Look, to the people who aren't comic book fans, here's what you need to know about Richard and Mary Parker. What you saw in the film is all you need to know. Because their history has changed so many times, I can't even keep them straight. They've been notorious researchers, they've been agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they've been just rogue operatives. They've been everything. Don't worry about Richard and Mary Parker and whether or not they have a bigger outline story here to the non. And I am going to do this a little bit in the review to non-comic fans. Here's what you need to worry about, and here's what you don't. Richard and Mary Parker, throw it away. Okay, what they do in this story is just fine. You don't need to know more. So we have that storyline. Then we have Gwen Stacy, who, if people remember from. What was her name again? Who's playing her again?
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone. Emma Stone's playing Gwen Stacy, and by the way, Andrew Garfield is playing our lovable neighborhood Spider-Man. Yeah. The story there is, her family has kind of gotten over the fact that her father. I still laugh at this whole concept. He was played by Dennis Leary. I mean, I'm amazed that she survived up until high school, or he survived. It's Dennis Leary, guys. So her storyline is she's very successful. She was the valedictorian of her high school graduation. In fact, they have this nice little gag where she's trying to get Peter to show up to the graduation and calling him up on the smartphone.
Yeah, he's off fighting a crime. And...
Yeah, he's trying to stop a heist. And so she goes and stands up, but she also records her speech, which comes later, because she's worked hard on that speech. Then we get to see her kind of going to be an employee of Oscorp, which she kind of was in the first movie. I guess she was an intern.
Yeah, that's right.
So now she's like a full-fledged employee, but she's also being given this separate opportunity to go to Oxford, which is kind of a... So now they have like two tethers on their relationship. One of which comes later is her opportunity to go to Oxford to learn... I think it was a medical research grant. And then... the other one is obviously that Peter made the promises that he did to her father, and he doesn't feel like he's honoring them if he's together with her. Even if, by the way, it was her choice, so at that point, she was absolved, or Peter was absolved of everything because she chose. Peter Parker syndrome, guys. Peter Parker syndrome. Anyway, the other storylines to follow is Harry Osborn, played by, and now his name is escaping me too. We have IMDb right here. We've gotten sick and tired of not knowing this stuff right off the top of our head. So we fixed that, boys and girls. So yeah, we have the character Harry Osborn, who I think got a little bit featured in the first movie, but not much.
No, he really wasn't in the first movie.
We knew that he was in the same high school as Peter, but they weren't... I don't think they were friends in the first movie.
We never saw him in the first movie.
Did we not?
No.
Okay, so...
Where,
I can find him really quick. Here we go. Dane DeHaan. And if I'm saying your name incorrectly, I apologize. So here's the way that it works for Harry Osborn. Harry gets to meet his dying father, which we've been hinted at in the first movie with Dr. Connors in the jail cell, and I guess we got to see a sickly Norman Osborn come and talk to him because it was Chris Cooper. He gets to see his father in his last minutes of life. And we find out that both Norman and Harry have a degenerative retrovirus that he spent his entire life trying to cure and couldn't do it. So he hands over all of the assets, all the scientific assets, to Harry in his final moments. To which Harry starts going through them and eventually finds out about Richard Parker, who was working with him on the ability, or the fact that spiders have the ability to heal. So the whole plot of Harry is, first of all, he's getting integrated with Oscorp, which is obviously full of corrupt bureaucrats and everything like that, and he's sick of it. Then the disease starts setting in. Then he's starting to have those problems, to which then he finds out how to access the asset that his father's given him, this repository of all the projects that Oscorp was working on. Then he finds out about Richard Parker. And he thinks this is basically his panacea. This is his elixir. If he can get, especially since obviously not all the spiders are dead, because there's a living, breathing spider out there swinging through New York City. So his whole thing there is he thinks if he gets Spider-Man's blood, that this will cure him. Spider-Man eventually comes to him and says, because he comes to Peter, explains the situation, and Peter does not trust that this is going to fix things, so as Spider-Man, he tells him no. This sends Harry into a rage, but then he finds out that they actually kept the venom of all the spiders that died, so if he injects himself with the venom, he'll be fine. Of course, right? Because that's the way it works in the Marvel Universe, right? Right?
No.
Right? Oh, okay. And so he does that, and eventually does mutate into the now in this continuity's Green Goblin. He's another story that people have to follow. Another major storyline is that of the the electrician Max Dillon, played by Jamie Foxx. This is the role that people were waiting to see whether or not it was going to pan out. Now that we've gone into kind of the heroes, quasi-villains, we're going to go into the villains. Max Dillon is the quirkiest, geekiest, clumsiest guy you'll ever meet, and has every kind of obsession with Spider-Man and everything else. He's very quirky. So much so that I actually was kind of screaming in the theater going, wow, Marvel, wow, Sony Pictures, I didn't realize that you were going to paint him as a villain. Because he's like a freaking stalker at that point, especially when Gwen Stacy actually admits that she knows his name. I almost expected 10 minutes later we were going to see him with like her panties or something. Because that was the way they were going with that stupid character. So, obviously, he's the biggest wallflower in his company, and he works for Oscorp. That's the greatest place to be a wallflower, right? And he eventually gets written off. And so his management tries to kill him. And instead, they make him into a monster. And they make him into the being known as Electro. Wow. They didn't think that if you did that, it was going to end badly.
Well, it really was an accident he falls into it.
It was an accident that if people had writing comics was totally going to go horribly wrong.
Yeah, we all knew something was going to go horribly wrong. It wasn't like they... I think you were kind of confusing there, that it wasn't that they were actually trying to kill him, that he just had an accident, then they tried to hide this accident that happened to keep the company going good and keep everything in green.
The reason that I'm not mixing this up is just as much of an accident as a random criminal walking into a nuclear testing silo to become Sandman. This is a Marvel Universe accident. So at that point,
hey, maybe you should check it's actually a bird before. Sorry, I love how it ended.
And you gotta love the fact that he was trying to do everything safe. And let's put this into real life, boys and girls. He was trying to do everything safe, and the guy's like, "No, crap that! I'm not turning things off. I'm not gonna play this safe. I'm out the door." And normally, in real human life, we'd say, "Yeah, we're not touching this.
Yeah,
we're not doing it." Max Dillon, however, says, "Okay, I'll do it without." Connects it. Oh, it looks like it's going to go okay. Boom! And everything goes awry, and now he is Electro. So we have those moments where he realizes, oh, now I have all this power, and I'm not a threat, but everybody perceives him as a threat because, oh no, he looked different. And so at that point, he becomes the villain, and he decides he wants to make everybody suffer. The other villain of this film, whom is really hard to call a villain because he didn't really get much of a spotlight at all, in fact, he probably should have been saved for the next movie, was Paul Giamatti. People might remember, this is the villain that I was looking forward to because it made no sense. And I was wondering, how on earth are you going to put Paul Giamatti as the Marvel villain Rhino? How are you going to do it? Well, you get your explanation later, and we'll get into that. But he's kind of wasted space at that point. He is, insert random terrorist here. He's got maybe a Russian accent, but he didn't talk that much. So at that point, he really is just kind of everything you saw in the trailer, where you have the scene where Spider-Man's dodging all the machine gun bullets and capturing him. That's all you get. And you know what? I'm going to say this for the record. Spidey deserved to have him turn into a villain. I'm sorry, but when you pants somebody, they're going to become a villain. They're going to be... He literally used his webbing, made it so that he couldn't move his arms, pantsed him, and then had the gun hit his head to knock him out. I'm just saying, this is a generalized rule. If you pants them, they're going to come and get you. So at that point, Paul Giamatti is probably, for me, he is the biggest disappointment. Because he was out of nowhere. And I could even tell, just looking at Jamie Foxx and looking at Dane DeHaan and what they were going to do with them, yeah, they were going to be villains. But that's beside the point. I'm trying to think if there are any other storylines that we need to follow. Not really. I mean, we have May Parker, and she's still getting over the loss of Ben and the fact that life is changing. And so we have a couple of really good moments with Sally Field as May Parker, but not a whole lot.
I think there were a lot more, though, this time than the first movie, which made it a little more satisfying. Enough
for... I would agree and disagree. I think there was enough for people to relate to May Parker, but they didn't go, for example, in the Sam Raimi films, there were a couple of scenes with that Aunt May, and her name is escaping me.
Rosemary Harris.
Rosemary Harris. Where the scenes were probably longer than they needed to be, but it was for a reason. And that was that Aunt May is Peter's anchor, in a lot of cases, because she's usually the one that's always kind of conveying Uncle Ben's beliefs to Peter Parker when he's not having the flashback of with great power comes great... I'm actually kind of surprised we didn't get that the entire time this time around. With great power comes great responsibility. And so the moments were good. I'm not saying Sally Field did horribly. Not at all. I think her and Martin Sheen as both Ben and May Parker was one of the best choices they could have made. There just isn't enough for her to be the kind, caring aunt that I remember her to be, but I read the comics, so I know her. I also would have liked to have the conflict. I actually love the conflict in the comics where May doesn't trust... May believes J. Jonah, okay? She doesn't get the reason why J. Jonah hates the guy, but she doesn't like Spider-Man either. And so at that point, I guess in order to make her kinder, they didn't have her do that. But that was a wonderful element of the comics, especially when later on, I do think he told her. No, did he tell her along with everybody else? I can't remember.
And they kind of did that in the Raimi films too, where she was kind of... Yeah, so
she didn't know.
there, but there wasn't much in the Raimi films either, but you're right, they really didn't play that much here either.
No, and actually, I think they did, but it was... In the Raimi films, it was just because J. Jonah was saying he was evil. It's the same thing the comics did.
It wasn't so much... Well, maybe it was.
It was...
I really don't remember her ever channeling Jameson, though, in the first. Maybe that's because... I don't know.
That's the way it goes, but,
I mean, I've seen those movies a few dozen times.
Of course, they air on every TV network.
Yeah.
So, Sally Field did a good job. I mean, there really wasn't much to expect from her as May Parker, but it was fine with the stuff that we got. I actually like the whole argument about the laundry machine. How Peter wants to be a big boy. It's really that he has the Spider-Man outfit there, and he doesn't want her to see it. Mm-hmm. And then I did actually like the fact that she said, no, you'll ruin the laundry. The last time you did anything, everything turned red and blue. Gee, that should have been a hit for you, Aunt May. What is Spider-Man dressed up as? Red and blue. Oh, crap. So we had some good moments. But overall, let's kind of go into the... At this point, we've gone over into all of the storylines. Let's kind of go into the combat. So the first time we meet Electro, and he doesn't call himself that yet, he's still very much the overly obsessive Max Dillon. And Spider-Man tries to calm him down. It's actually a really good and tender moment. Mm-hmm. This is one of those things where I will compliment Mark Webb on, because the whole, I don't know if you noticed it, but the audio around that whole scene was wonderful, because you had that moment where everybody was freaking out at how Electro looked, and then all of a sudden we'd have like this little ambient, almost like I almost want to look at the soundtrack to see if there actually was a song where it's just like, hate them, distrust them, fear them, destroy them kind of thing, and it would play, and it almost sounded like it was playing in Max Dillon's head.
Yeah, I heard the song too.
That was a really cool moment, especially given what Max Dillon must have been going through at that given time. And so you can see that Andrew Garfield's character, or Peter Parker, is trying to talk him down from the ledge. The problem is that when one accident happens, and then all the monitors that originally had... I mean, here's the thing. Electro is fixated on the fact that everybody now knows him, because he's on every screen in Times Square. Then the accident happens, Spider-Man stops it, and then all the screens just slowly shift to Spider-Man. And you see Jamie Foxx go from screen to screen to screen to screen, and he goes... That's where it kind of starts snapping for him. And that's when he becomes like a really good villain, somewhat. Because at that point he becomes resentful of that which he idoled, or that which he idolized. So we don't really get much combat there, but later in the film we do have the showdown between Spider-Man and Electro, which was really well done, especially since Especially since at that point now Electro knows, since he is electricity, he can travel through the power lines. This is one of the things I actually like about the later Electro, is that he can travel through power lines and he can make things super difficult. I especially like the fact that when they had their combat going on, we had kind of a Masters of the Universe moment where every time he hit one of the electrodes around them, it would make a sound. And so you'd get this boom, 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 boom. And that was a really cool scene to look at as far as combat. Unfortunately, though, it just doesn't feel all that resentful. We kept getting scenes from Jamie Foxx about, how he's going to create a world without Spider-Man. But we didn't really get any direct consequences aside from the media focused on Spider-Man instead of him. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, it's Spider-Man for being selfish. Why? That was the part that bothered me about it, especially when he becomes so freaking homicidal towards Spider-Man. When Spider-Man, up until this point, has done no wrong. Spider-Man has literally done everything that he should have done. He didn't actually try to hit him. There was no mistaken try to hit or anything like that. So I actually just walked away confused. I actually thought Electro actually should have just said, dude, you're my buddy. But that's me. What about you, Alex?
Well, I guess he thought Peter kind of betrayed him when the sniper took a shot at him. So
even though he was saying, don't take a shot. This is my buddy Max.
Yeah, I mean, he probably wasn't believing him, I guess, because he's very clearly insecure about himself. I'm gonna have to talk about the character Max. Now, I'm not really the comic reader that Adam is. Most of my Spider-Man knowledge is...
let's just get into the character development. So,
most of my Spider-Man knowledge comes from either the cartoon or or any of the movies, really. So, and this character, I'm willing to venture a guess that this is not this character for real.
No.
Frankly, even it doesn't bother me if it strays from the source materials as it works, and to me it doesn't work very well here because he's too much like Edward Nygma and Batman.
It really is.
Batman Forever. So he's.
I'm glad you made that because it was the Jim Carrey Edward Nygma.
Yeah, the Jim Carrey Edward Nygma.
Because they had the whole unkempt hair and he walked with this weird straddle and he was trying to carry around all of his all of his.
Yeah, well, he was nerdy and he became...
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing that's triggered his obsession with Spider-Man was Spider-Man tried to save him from the heist that introduced Paul Giamatti, and he kind of helped him pick up his blueprints and all that, and he's like, no, I see that you're doing a lot of things, and I see your name is Max. What? How do you know my name is Max? You're wearing an Oscorp badge. All right, now you're my eyes. And here's the thing, he gave the same speech that you would give to a little kid.
Yeah.
And at that point, this character reacted the way he should have, becoming very obsessive. So I agree with you there. It was very much the Jim Carrey Edward Nygma.
Mm-hmm. And, okay, so I think overall, though, what I've enjoyed about this movie was tonally how different it was from the Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't hate this Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 by any means. I think it's a pretty good movie. I always like the first one more, though. And because sort of like this, where the first one was very enjoyable, very exciting, very good time, and the second one was a lot more serious, a little more droopy, a little more mopey, if I dare say. This one wasn't, to me. It had its serious moments, but it still had this sort of snark. It had the same... Peter's snark, that is, right? He still kind of...
I would actually dare say that
on the charm.
That the Mark Webb movies have done better by Peter Parker's character than the Raimi films did. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons is because one of the main reasons people remember Spider-Man is his snark. And those movies did not have much snark in them at all when he was Spider-Man. He was making jokes when he was Peter Parker, but that wasn't the thing. He was making these jokes as Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. So at that point, this is where I will say the Mark Webb movies excel, is that this is the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that we're all used to.
And this movie, the second one, in fact, I think did even better job at making sort of the nerdy Peter Parker side come out. The first one, I think, kind of missed that, right? When you cast a kind of a looker like Andrew Garfield, and yeah, he's good looking. What can I say? You know,
what Alex is trying to say is he has a bit of a man crush on Andrew Garfield. No, I'm kidding. No, we're kidding. No fanfic about that.
Oh, jeez. No, when you cast somebody like Andrew Garfield, who's quite young, very slender, and you know, and really looks like Andrew Garfield, as opposed to somebody who's a little more stocky, a little more bulky, like Tobey Maguire. You know, I think first Tobey Maguire sold Peter Parker a little better in that sense, but this one I think brought out Peter's more shy, nerdy awkwardness, like the way he's kind of, when he's trying to talk to Gwen, so many times he's stumbling over himself, I can't make up my mind, that kind of thing. And that, to this movie's credit, did that really well, even better than the first Mark Webb movie, and so really happy on that aspect.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
No, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I guess we'll leave the fight scenes to later. Let's get into the character development, because I kind of want to go into Andrew Garfield versus Tobey Maguire. Alex knows this about me, and I've said it a lot in the Let's Plays. When I look at some of these characters and say, can they be Peter Parker? Can they be Stephen Rogers? I am always... Alex, you can attest to this. I'm always negative about it, because I don't know if you can. I was the same way with Tobey Maguire. I was the same way with Chris Evans as Captain America. I was even that way with Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, and that kind of got proven right. And I'm glad they put him in Captain America. Andrew Garfield, as far as I'm concerned, does a far better performance of Peter Parker than Tobey Maguire could ever reach. And the reason I say that is exactly why you pointed it out. Peter Parker is a geek. Peter Parker is the awkward social... This is why a lot of people in Marvel, young comic readers, could relate to Peter. Because most of them were geeks themselves. They were getting beat up.
Yeah, and Peter Parker is really kind of the first of his kind as a teenage superhero, really.
Yes. Well, is he?
I think so.
I think he is. I think he was the youngest at the time. They've now had younger heroes, but at the time, Peter Parker was the youngest, so he was easily relatable. Okay? Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker never really delved into that. They always tried to make him the serious, well-minded individual. He never was kind of the closet nerd. The perfect example that I can give here is in all of the... Let's compare these. Making the costume. Tobey, they did this whole montage. They didn't actually even show him, I don't think, sewing the costume. They just showed all the sketches, kind of thing. In The Amazing Spider-Man, we saw him knitting up the costume, we saw him making the actual web fluid, and all that. I mean, the very most that we got with Peter in that regard was he was testing out his powers, okay? And that wasn't great. Especially in the fact that it was natural spider powers, which, for me as a comic nut, I love the fact that he made his own web fluid, okay? That was a great idea.
Yeah, I'll get that when we get to the combat a little more, but I personally love those training scenes from movie 1, from Sam Raimi's movie 1.
Where he's just jumping around.
And he's trying to figure out how to shoot the web, and especially the, go web, go!
Okay, that joke aside, that was fun, but at the same time, having that whole 5-6 minute moment where I'm walking up the wall, and then, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Yes, I just hit the pitch on the camera, I don't care. And then having him just jumping across buildings, I will say that The Amazing Spider-Man did that better, because it wasn't really the fact that he had all these cool powers, because at that point he had super strength and super speed, okay, and then he had the spider sense, which I will also point out doesn't really react all that well in the first 3 movies.
That's for sure. The
spider sense works better in the Amazing movies. I think in all honesty, the reason they wanted to do the spider sense was that whole high school scene, and then after that they're like, we don't care.
Yeah, that's true, and that's true.
So, but Peter Parker, or Andrew, I keep on saying Peter Parker, it's so easy to say that. Tobey Maguire versus Andrew Garfield, At the time, I had no problem with Tobey Maguire. I thought he was fine. But now that Andrew Garfield has stepped into the fray, he meets a lot more of the requirements to be Peter Parker than Tobey does. And the main problem is that Tobey, they didn't really focus on the geekier elements. They focused on how he was supposed to be a serious individual.
Except for like Spider-Man 2, where they kind of ham and cheese it up with the after he loses his powers, he puts back on the glasses and you have raindrops falling on my head. That whole montage, you remember that? And then it ends with that freeze frame.
I thought that was dinky.
I thought,
but that's
so
just
too.
because the whole losing the powers shtick. Because again, as a comic fan, that's not how that went. But see, for a second there, I thought you were going to go to the absolutely asinine, stupid montage they did in the third movie, where he made himself a total geek. Walking down Main Street.
Walking down the street pointing at people and doing the crotch shake.
Yeah.
And crotch shake. Oh, God.
But I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the problems that I have with Tobey Maguire. Those were forced moments. They felt horribly forced.
You know, that's...
And Andrew...
That's more of a fault, though, I think, of...
More of a fault with Raimi.
Alvin Sargent and Sam Raimi than it was of Tobey.
Yes, I don't think he was properly directed. But I think Mark Webb gets what to do with Andrew Garfield. I'm not saying that Tobey Maguire's a horrible actor. I'm saying I think Andrew Garfield does better, and that could be through direction. That could be that he fits the look a little bit better. That could be a number of things. I'm just saying I like Andrew Garfield's portrayal more than I do Tobey Maguire's.
Not bad for an almost 30-year-old Brit.
Mm.
Okay, that was unnecessary, no, but oh well.
Anyway, so... we gone into Andrew... I think we murdered Andrew Garfield at this point. Let's go into some of the other characters. Emma Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, am I starting? Okay. Emma Stone was... I mean, she was okay. I didn't have a problem with her in the first movie, but the problem is that she kind of was eye candy in the first movie, and she's eye candy in the second movie.
I think she did a little better, though. I think she had more...
I want to clarify this really quick. I'm not saying she's Megan Fox eye candy. I'm saying she's Peter Parker level eye candy, okay? She's cute looking, and she's smart, and it's really fun to see her get the to see Peter get the googly eyes. All right, that's what I mean. They didn't have like these innocuous poses or anything like that. They did it as best as they could, and there were a lot of times where she felt genuinely the girlfriend, even when they're supposed to be broken up.
And I think, though, to the credit of Emma Stone, and again, this is partially her, this is partially just... Well, Emma Stone always acted the role fine. I think the writers had a better sense of giving her character more to do this time.
Yeah.
Than in the first movie, where she was just sort of the sideline girlfriend. This time, we actually got to get a little character arc out of her. As you mentioned this, how Peter's kind of hesitant, because he keeps seeing Gwen Stacy's father, and, you know, he, of course...
So yeah, these awkward scenes where Dennis Leary's in the background.
He promised...
Remember me from Rescue Me?
He promised her father, right before he died, that he wouldn't get her involved, because he didn't want to see her get hurt, and it made him kind of an awkward moment.
Yeah, well, it was just kind of a haunting moment for Peter.
Yeah.
That he's breaking his promise.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's what Peter has to wrestle with in this film, and I think that's what they did a lot better with Gwen Stacy this time around. And here comes the big spoiler. I'm a little shocked that they killed her so soon.
No, I'm not.
I guess, yeah, but, I mean...
I'll get into that later.
I do know that Gwen's... I mean, for me, it's always been Mary Jane, of course, because, again, I was the cartoon watcher, and Mary Jane was more focused, but I knew Gwen Stacy dies.
No. Gwen was in the animated show.
I'm sure she was, but I always remember Mary Jane more than Gwen.
In fact, the new series, Spectacular Spider-Man, before Ultimate, Gwen was the focus.
Yeah, I'm just talking the 90s cartoon, and you're probably right, Gwen was probably in it. I just remember Mary Jane a lot more. And
well, okay, let me clarify that, because both of them in the comics were pursuable by Peter. Mary Jane was the neighbor girl, okay? She was the cute girl next door, and yes, Peter pined over her and all that. In fact, it was kind of fun, and I loved how the animated series did it, where they tried to recreate the comics and the fact that Aunt May was always constantly trying to get Peter to meet up with her. He hadn't seen her, and he's like, I don't want to do a blind date. I don't know, Aunt May. I'm just too busy. And then they have the reveal, and she's just smoking hot. And it's like, oh, maybe I should have listened to you, Aunt May. You know? I think the animated series that you're talking about did that really, really well.
Yeah.
Gwen is the scientist. She's the one that is smart enough to be able to understand a lot of what Peter is saying. So here's the thing. Where Mary Jane caters more to the carnal, you know, she's good looking. Gwen was the intellectual side, and that was always cool, especially with some of what they did with Gwen Stacy. Overall in the series, multiple series, but I think overall, okay, let me get into that because we are going to get questions. I am not surprised they killed off Gwen Stacy. In fact, I told you as soon as we walked out, I could tell she was going to die very early. And this is the same problem that I have with this movie, which is Peter Parker syndrome. And for those who do not know what I'm talking about, I am going to refer everybody over to the 200th episode of Atop the Fourth Wall with Linkara. It explains it perfectly. For some reason, Peter Parker can never be happy. Peter Parker can never grow up. And this was the problem. I knew right off the bat they were going to have to make him sad. Why? Because Peter Parker can never be happy, and therefore, in turn, can never grow up. Peter Parker can never grow up. He's a Toys R Us kid. Okay? That's the problem with Peter Parker as a whole, and actually, in a lot of cases, why I don't read Spider-Man anymore. It's because where his readership grew up, his readership had kids, his readership has jobs, he never did. And that became a problem. So, this is where I feel bad for Emma Stone, because she was written into a point where she was either going to die, or she was going to leave him. That's just the bottom line. I'm at least thankful that they were tasteful in both her death, as well as, well, they were somewhat tasteful in her death, but they were also tasteful in how she acted, okay? They didn't go the Megan Fox route or anything like that. She was still very much the intellectual that Gwen Stacy should always be, and I guess I could always say it could have been worse. She could have been killed by Carnage like she was in the Ultimate Universe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that wasn't fun. But overall, Emma Stone did a great job. I'm not gonna qualm her for it, but I could see the writing on the wall. She wasn't gonna be there forever.
Of course, she's gonna die sooner or later. I figured movie 4, movie 3. Well, anyway.
Peter Parker can't be happy that long.
Peter Parker can't be happy that long, apparently.
Really can't. This is the problem. This is in a lot of cases why Spider-Man, especially if Mark Webb starts doing this, then he needs to rethink that. Otherwise, he's going to have the same problem Marvel does. So let's go into the villains. Let's go into Jamie Foxx.
Okay.
His overall performance. I think he was okay. I was coming in dreading this because I do like Jamie Foxx as an actor. I think he's had hit or miss roles, but in a lot of cases that's been, I don't think he was directed properly. I don't think they used him to his full potential. He was the kooky black guy. Sorry, not trying to be a dork here, but he was like the token black dude. Mm-hmm. Stealth. Stealth. What? It was Top Gun with Jamie Foxx. I liked Stealth, but I thought Jamie Foxx was useless in it. Mm-hmm. So overall, I was worried that since they were going to put him in a villain's role, especially when we started seeing the early stuff, it was very clear who he was going to be playing, and I didn't like the fact that we had to have the hoodie and all that. Compared to my dreading of him coming in, I will say he did better. Not by much, but he did better than what I expected. Jamie took the character, made it as kooky as possible, and I agree with you, he's freaking Edward Nygma from Batman Forever. But given the fact that in a lot of cases where they do try to write a story for Electro, that is kind of the character he's playing, it was fine. It just looked dinky when he was... I'll admit, the whole Max Dillon stuff looked just dinky. It was really, really corny. When he becomes Electro, I think he maybe went a little more over the top than he should have, especially since they try to do this augmenting of his voice to make it sound like his voice is an electrical surge, and it's really hard in some of those scenes to hear what he's saying.
I had no problem.
I had plenty, because where I got the words that he was saying, his inflection was lost in that modification. Especially in the moments where he would get angry and the blue electricity around him is turning red. And so at that point he goes into a world without Spider-Man. And you get that just surging in there, and it takes away a lot of what his face and his body language is trying to say. So at that point, that's really... I kind of fault the technicians that did all the CG. I think they did that problem. But I will say his performance was alright. I liked what they did with him, especially in the later scenes where I especially love when him and Harry go to Oscorp and get the answers that they're looking for at the time. Because at that point, you really got the feeling like he finally had confidence. This is the guy that had no confidence whatsoever, even when he started being Electro. Now he did, because he knew exactly where he was on the food chain. And he let you know, he let everybody know who he was. So overall, Jamie Foxx did better than I expected. Not by much, though. What about you, Alex?
I had no expectations going in. Electro's just one of those villains that escapes my memory for some reason. It's kind of... I'm not saying he's not memorable, but for some reason...
You mean the character Electro?
Yeah.
It's because there really isn't anything there.
Yeah, it's just...
I am Electro! I am dude with electric powers!
Like,
next story.
It's like Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, I remember them fine. But, it was like Scarecrow and Batman. I have no recollection of Scarecrow from Batman the Animated Series.
I like Scarecrow, but...
And so that's why I was like, oh, the hell's Scarecrow? When I saw Batman Begins.
Okay, that's a meme right there. Who the hell is Scarecrow?
That's what I was like when I saw Batman Begins. So I was like, okay. No expectations of Jamie Foxx. I think he did fair enough. I mean, again, there wasn't much to work with because he was an Edward Nygma clone.
For the first part,
Yeah.
And then he became Electro, and then you started to see...
fair enough, he doesn't ham it up like Jim Carrey.
Yes, that's the difference. Where Jim decided to ham it up as Riddler, Electro slowly serious up.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, so he has that character progression, and that was fine with me.
Yeah, I especially think that audio played a lot into Electro's character, obviously, with the combat scene where you had the bum, 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 bum. And then
his theme song, pretty much.
I would love to get that, because that was really cool. It was like, fear me, destroy me, things like that. Okay, so let's go into the other villain, Dane DeHaan.
Yeah, Harry Osborn. This one's a little tough for me.
Am I the only one that thought Light Yagami when I looked at him?
Light Yagami, yeah.
I really did. I thought Light Yagami because he really looked like he was out of the freaking Death Note universe.
Yeah, he's got the hairstyle.
He's got the emo-over.
The emo-over, yeah. But nothing against Dane DeHaan, but he seems like a poor man's...
Except the fact that we may be murdering his name, but...
I don't know. I'm sure he's okay. I think he's got a pretty short resume comparatively. I think he's kind of new to acting, so...
If he's relatively unknown, then he did fine.
He did fine, but I think he's I think in this case, just his general age, his general appearance, he seems like either a poor man's Michael Cera, a poor man's Jesse Eisenberg. I don't want to diss him. I think he did fine. He did fine. Obviously he's very different from Willem Dafoe's performance. Well, Willem Dafoe's Harry Osborn is Green Goblin. He's now...
Depending on who you're talking about. Are we talking actual Osborn or Green Goblin?
Green Goblin.
Okay. I'll have stuff to say there, but,
he played Green Goblin a hell of a lot more memorable than James Franco did. Granted, Franco had 10 minutes of Goblin time?
And he wasn't really supposed to be Green Goblin. That was the thing, too.
You mean period or
Period. It was because he wasn't crazy like Green Goblin.
Right.
It was just that he had the tools.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've said back in a couple of LP he was supposed to be Hobgoblin, and I know that's not the case, but That's really how I kind of looked at it, is that he might as well be somebody else because he's not the Green Goblin. So overall, you liked his performance?
Yeah, I think he did fine. You know, no complaints there.
So I'm gonna actually break it apart because, as Harry Osborn, he did fairly well. His moments with Norman were very powerful. It really kind of gave you the weight, especially when you found out that about the disease. I liked how they did that, where Chris Cooper is like, "Are you starting to have the twitch in your hand yet?" And at that point, that's when it starts to hit him, and you start to see him slowly kind of devolve in his appearance. So that was cool. I also liked how he approached being the head of Oscorp, and how he really just only had one intent. He didn't care about the company. He cared about saving himself. So that was fine. I thought he was an overall good villain. I thought they had established motives very well for him, especially compared to Jamie Foxx. Because with that moment where he comes in, where Spider-Man comes in, he is like, "Oh my gosh, I'm saved!" And you can see it on his face. He's got that joy. And then you see him slowly go from depression to outright rage. That was a powerful scene, and I would actually like to know his previous work, because that shows me his range, and that's what I like to see. I think he did really, really well when you put that into perspective. That being said, let's take the other side of the coin and go into Green Goblin. I was not a fan of Willem Dafoe's performance as Green Goblin. I thought it was insanity it was hamming it up for the sake of insanity. Okay, the perfect example that I'm going to give to people is, dang it, his name is escaping me right now. Dark Knight, Joker, where you can appear insane and you don't have to cackle. Mm-hmm. Everybody gets it in the room, you are off your rocker. And so Willem Dafoe overly hammed things up to give the insanity of Green Goblin. Dane DeHaan did the same thing. And that was disappointing. Because he could have easily, at that moment, like, the problem was that he was already insane before he discovers. So he was already doing the evil grin, and the makeup was weird. But at that point, you could have said, I'm sane! And then have him snap, and it would have been a lot better to do, because then it would have been that scene all over again. And it would have been a lot more believable. So my interpretation of his Green Goblin is, it's just as bad as Willem Dafoe's. If that's multiple personalities, that's fine, but I didn't really excuse Willem Dafoe for it either. Overall, I think as Harry Osborn, he was really great. It's just the whole Green Goblin scene was really lacking. And I want to go into Paul Giamatti. I think he did fine, but I think he was wasted.
Yeah, Rhino was really shoehorned in for no reason.
It was really no reason other than to prep for the next movie. Which, spoiler alert, boys and girls! Sinister Six, Amazing Spider-Man 3. So Villain Fest 2014 is going to then become Villain Fest 2016. Calling it right now.
Yeah.
Because we had that moment where Green Goblin looks like he's going to assemble them all, because they're all in this secret vault. We see the Rhino costume, we see the Vulture wings, we see Doc Ock.
Here comes the anti-Avengers.
No, not even that. They were just, the Sinister Six was problems for Spider-Man. So overall, we got that spoiler alert, and then I just want to address the non-Easter egg that happened in this movie, which was for X-Men Days of Future Past. Wow, that was totally forced in.
Yeah, that was weird.
It was stupid. I thought for a second, if you're going to hint at something, you hint at Amazing Spider-Man 3 and show maybe a couple of the others suiting up, because we'd already seen Rhino in his armor up until that point. And that's actually one of the things I will say. I was actually pretty pissed for most of the movie, as Alec can attest, but at the very end of that movie, I was excited. That was cool, and then it faded to black, and I went, "Ah!" Because I was like, dude, you were finally fixing this! So overall, let's kind of give our scores of it. Well,
Before we do that,
yeah.
I really gotta go into the music for this film.
Okay.
Hans Zimmer and the Fantastic Five, who we collaborated with for the soundtrack, they did...
Were they the Magnificent Six that they were talking about?
Yeah, Magnificent Six, Magnificent Five, whatever they were.
Yeah.
They did such an amazing job with this score. I really was blown away. I was not expecting much, because frankly Zimmer's kind of reaching that point where I feel like he's going to be retiring soon, so I think he's kind of phoning a lot of his work in.
Well, since I would actually say that's wrong, because John Williams already just said he's not retiring because he's going to go to Episode 7's score. So Hans is going to bounce back and go, well, if you're not retired, I'm not retiring.
Right, so, you know, and frankly, this music, he was probably channeling Alan Silvestri's Avengers score just a little bit.
A little bit.
Not saying he was copying it outright or anything, but
I never got that feeling.
He was, but I felt like he was actually channeling it, and he did such a great job with the music in this film. And, yeah, we talked about sort of that weird psychedelic theme song that was playing with electro, and yeah, recording curse, people.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing it live, people. We're doing it live.
And I was so impressed. Because the first film was written by James Horner, and that was a very forgettable score, which is surprising because it's James Horner, and he's really great. He's usually really great with dramatic scores, but that was very forgettable in the first film. Zimmer,
all three films, as far as I'm concerned. You're talking he did all three of the Spider-Man films?
No, the first Mark Webb film.
Okay, yeah.
Because I love Danny Elfman's score for Spider-Man 1 and 2.
I was up in the air with it.
Oh, really? You suck.
Sorry.
You can't. Oh, the second one.
Superhero music, guys, is very hard to pull off.
I mean, the third one wasn't by Elfman, but that's a whole.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story.
In my defense, superhero music is really hard to pull off, and it's hit or miss in a lot of movies. So, like, for example, a lot of people liked the Raimi score. I did not. A lot of people hated Captain America, and I did. You know, and I liked it. So don't. You guys can go off on me. That's fine. It's all in the eye of the beholder.
I don't know.
And that's really what a superhero has to do. Is they have to build the individual up, kind of thing. This is why I can get into major moments in my own way, because I can see a supervillain punching Hitler in the face and go, yeah! Whereas for Alex, that's a different scene altogether.
Yeah. But I loved the music in this film much more than The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Probably about as much as I love Danny Elfman's score in Spider-Man's 1 and 2. Those were good scores. I know Adam disagrees with me.
I'd have to go back to the Amazing score and clarify, because I don't remember enough of it. That's kind of the problem. I thought you were talking about the Raimi films, not Amazing.
No, the Raimi films were fine. Even the third one, which was without Elfman, was fine. But this one really topped it, I think.
Okay.
I love sort of this triumphant Spider-Man theme that you get throughout, which was something that even Elfman, I don't think, really capitalized on.
No, never did.
Make it a real great...
And he missed out on a lot of really great opportunities, because in the Raimi movies, you always had, like, New York stepping up for Spider-Man, and you never played anything epic in that moment. And that would have been really cool! But
what else? I'm losing my train of thought already. But so much, and I'm also, I gotta say, I'm really glad he didn't go the Dark Knight route, or the Batman Begins route, or the Dark Knight. Well, the Dark Knight Rises soundtrack was so much more memorable than the first two.
You mean, like, just overall score?
Yeah.
No, I like it when people actually try to paint an overall image of that hero. The best example would be the Dark Knight films. As that evolved, it got better over time. I would say the Dark Knight Rises is the overall best, but I like the evolution of it. Captain America is the other example I'd give of that.
Mostly, everybody remembers about the Dark Knight is that guitar stringing.
No, the dun 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 dun. Are you talking about
that? That and the Joker, that constant wail of the guitar with the Joker, where it's just going that hum, that constant, persistent hum.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really glad Zimmer strayed away from that this time, and actually went for a full dynamic score. I was a little nervous too because the people he's teamed up with have written some really awful songs.
Well, then that's why Hans Zimmer's running the show.
Yeah, so
at that point.
I've seen some of the composers he was teaming up with for this, and they're like rappers, and they've written some really awful, awful songs, and I'm like, oh god, this music's gonna suck even worse than Horner's boring score, and no, actually, it turned out to be really pleasantly good.
Yeah. It kept you.
It kept
music is supposed to keep you in the moment. It did it in this movie,
and which much more than surprisingly James Horner's score in Amazing Spider-Man 1 did. I do not remember anything of Horner's score.
I'd have to listen to that score again to see if it actually did anything. Because
it just,
I will say one of the things that if I don't remember it, obviously it wasn't memorable. But, there was a lot going on with Amazing Spider-Man 1 that was kind of problematic. So, this one fixes a lot of the problems they had in the equation in the first one.
Oh, they also, there's some jokes to probably be made because they probably got a bigger budget because this time they got to use Google as a search engine. Because in the first...
No. They got to use Google, but they didn't get to use YouTube, if you noticed that.
Yeah.
They had to block out the YouTube logo. I'm like, you went with Google. Google is YouTube. Why do you have a problem with this?
Well, I mean, it's probably they didn't need to show the logo just because.
I also noticed that one of the
because I just remember in the first
one of the laptops was supposed to be a Sony Vaio, and they made it so that it's really hard to see the Vaio on it. I'm like, it's Sony Pictures, guys.
Yeah, well, it's also funny because, like, the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, that is, they used Bing as a search engine, and I don't have anything against Bing. I actually like Bing a lot better than Google, but that
actually just called back.
Unfortunately, I just remember the CinemaSins video calling a foul on the Bing search engine.
Yeah.
So I do have to kind of laugh that this time. Well, Google.
I'm just going to point this out because you would have appreciated yesterday's episode of Geek News Reviews and Opinions, where that was the first thing that Aldo had to ask Romney was, did we have Spider-Man using Bing to search for something?
No,
sadly no.
This time he used Google. Yay! Everyone can love him now.
So you can get the rights to Google, but you can't get the rights to YouTube.
Well, I figured they did. Well, they would have had to, I'm sure.
Probably.
It's kind of self-explanatory. You really don't need to show the YouTube logo just because the video player styles.
Yes, the player was there, and that's all that matters. But it also made me laugh that they tried to do the whole Bill Nye the Science Guy spoof where there was this other guy on YouTube.
It wasn't a Bill... Because there are a lot of videos.
That's what it felt like to me.
I don't think it was a Bill Nye spoof per se, because there's a lot of videos like that are like these educational videos on YouTube like that, where they're kind of like these... They do kind of play that Bill Nye style where they're very comical and very live to teach you something, and
yes,
good on them. And okay, so that was just my little random thought.
All right, so I'm actually going to change things up a little bit. We will give our overall score, but Alex, best and worst of the film.
Okay, best is music was great. Andrew Garfield's performance was great. Emma Stone did great. Great acting overall. Great casting.
Yeah, that's actually not what I was like. Maybe I should have clarified that a little bit more, and we're going to do this a little bit more with these vlogs. Best and worst moments in the film.
You mean just story-wise, not like...
no, just moments. Like, they could be jokes in the film or whatever.
Okay, best...
You can still do your best and worst. I just wanted to see best and worst moment.
Oh, yeah, I was doing that. I'm talking about overall what's good about the... What's good about the film.
Then go for it.
Okay, so yeah, and the Stan Lee cameo. We always gotta have your Stan Lee cameo.
I think I know that guy. I'm sorry, I need to get into my Stan Lee. I think I know that guy.
Worst parts was, you're right, it's Villain Fest 2014. It really is. It's 3 movies shoehorned into one, like Spider-Man 3 was. So that's probably the bad part about it.
Yeah. Best moment for me was the reveal of Electro. That was really awesome, just with how the audio made that overall very, very well done. I had a couple of other best moments, but that would be the one that stuck above all else, because you cannot make a moment better than that to define a villain. You can't. That is literally how that felt to me. Worst moment of the film... probably the Volt. Probably to seeing the realization that yes, the Sinister Six is in Spider-Man 3, because it just makes me go, oh well, they couldn't really even manage 3 villains here, 2.5, I guess. How are they going to manage 6? It's gonna be nuts. So that's my overall deal. I will say a couple of my other best moments. I love whenever they do the science-y stuff. And I love the fact how he was trying to get his webbing to hold an electrical charge.
Yeah, that was
the whole call back to Iron Man, where he's like blowing it all down, and then just like, oh, I see a spark.
Yeah, I gotta give a bit of compliments to that too. They actually made the webbing a lot. The concern he uses mechanical web shooters this time.
Yeah.
It actually felt like an Achilles heel, because the first time it felt like, oh, so you gave him artificial web slingers for what reason? He's pretty much got bottomless cartridges anyway.
Because that's the way it actually was.
I know that's the way it was. I'm sorry, James Cameron had the right idea when he gave Peter natural web slinging.
James Cameron?
Yeah, that was James Cameron's idea.
James Cameron failed, because in turn Marvel went back to the shooters. It's a difference of opinion, guys!
Well, again, this time they actually gave it more of an Achilles heel.
Yes.
The first movie, it was just all like, so he made these fake web shooters. Well, he's got bottomless cartridges anyway. Oh no, they got destroyed? Well, gee, he already pretty much did everything. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, but yeah, okay. So best and worst moments there. Overall, the score you would give this thing?
8.5.
Out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 7.5, and that's just because there still was a lot wrong with it, and unfortunately a lot of that isn't necessarily the movie's fault. It's just Peter Parker syndrome is part of it, and unfortunately where I'm waiting for the movies to actually try and fix this problem, because it's so easy to fix, they still are falling into the same corner that Marvel walked themselves into. So that's just kind of the thing. And to people who don't understand the problems with Peter Parker, again, I'm going to point out, and I may even leave a link somewhere in it for Linkara's 200th episode of Atop the Fourth Wall, where he discusses One More Day and why he doesn't read Spider-Man anymore, because I'm kind of on the same camp. I have not seen any of the new evolutions, and I haven't seen Miles Morales, and I have not seen Dr. Octopus take over Peter's brain, and I haven't seen any of that, and it's not interesting to me, and it's just because Peter Parker is so broken at this point. So 7.5 for me. And again, hands down, applauding Jamie Foxx. You did better than I thought you were going to do. Alex can say, I've been making jokes this entire time that, I hope Jamie Foxx has a contingency plan, and then we saw the trailer for Annie, and I'm like, that's your contingency plan? That's a problem. So at that point, thank you, Jamie Foxx. You did far better than I thought you were going to do. Here's hoping Annie works out for you. I don't think it will. Especially when you're with Cameron Diaz. But that's me. So let's go ahead and... go ahead and say it. You're going to say something. No,
I'm pretty much in the same camp as you are. The
contingency plan's not working.
I'm not looking forward to Will Smith's nepotism 2.792398, whatever.
Pretty much. So, shall we give a sneak peek as to what's coming next?
Yeah, let's do it.
I almost want to blow it out like Toho.
Yes. Yes. Yes, our next movie is
going to see
Godzilla.
Gojira. We're going to go see Godzilla, guys. So we are looking forward to that, especially with the new trailers. It is looking awesome. And also, once again, guys, look to our channel over the summer. We've got big stuff in store. I'm totally excited for this. Alex, you're excited.
I am stoked.
We've got plenty of stuff coming this summer, especially since we have some free time. So... thanks for watching this. We hope you have enjoyed. We hope you guys can go see Spider-Man and make your own opinions and let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear your opinion. But in the meantime, this is Drak and Shadow. And Drak has to go vent his anger about Peter Parker!
And we're running out of batteries.
That too.
See you guys later.